Hi, everybody. This is Tom Salemi of Device Talks. Once again, I'm here at the lovely 160 Studios, here with my friends from the Mullings Group, Joe Mullings and Holly Scott. Joe and Holly, thanks for having me in this palatial studio.
Good to have you as part of the team.
I'm so comfortable. This chair is amazing.
The pina coladas come around in a little while.
So we're previewing Device Talks Boston. It's happening on May 10th and 11th in Boston. You're both kind enough to be our leadoff hitter and sort of our cleanup hitter. At the start, at the end of the show, we've talked a lot about what we'll be hitting at Device Talks Boston in our previous conversations that I've had individually with both of you. And we've covered sort of what employees can do during this sort of reset of Medtech. We've talked about the state of the industry, M&A-wise and robotics-wise. Kind of want to take this conversation in a bit of a different direction. So we've, again, been through a workforce reset, and I keep coming up with different weird ways of saying layoffs. But we're at a point where folks are going to be looking for new jobs. They're going to be recruited for new jobs at some of these companies that have had the layoffs, perhaps at some startups. So I'd love to get from you a sense, really on a practical level, if you're an employee. I like to understand if you're an employee who is being offered an opportunity at one of these larger companies. Let's talk about larger companies first. What are some things that they should sort of take into consideration when they're weighing their current position versus a position at a company that, again, has had a bit of a rocky time lately, but is clearly going to achieve great things in the future? So, Joe, let's kick it off with you. What sort of advice do you give to folks at assessing opportunities at some of these larger companies? What should they be looking for?
Well, I think, Tommy, you have to look at a couple things. One is, what function are they in? Are they in R&D? Are they in clinical? Are they in manufacturing? Are they in supply chain? Right? Just to use those as examples, because those are different strengths in the larger companies. You know, generally speaking, a heavy R&D lift doesn't necessarily happen at one of the big strategics. But gosh, they're great at supply chain. They're great at manufacturing. They're pretty good at clinical most of the time. And regulatory, they're okay at as well. So depending on the function we're looking at, I'll give you an example. There was a young man who I think the world of, and I always like to use real world experience. He calls me up, Harvard undergrad, Harvard grad, has done a couple great internships in Medtech, is at a great company right now in Boston. He called me up, he said, listen, I've got the opportunity to go into the digital section of this large strategic. What do you think? And this young man's got a lot of options. And I said to him, I said, explain to me exactly what the role is. Because if you ask knee-jerk reaction, I'm like, stay away from the big strategic for digital. Obviously, they're not getting it right.
Right.
Given his background and what he's done to date, though, I asked him, are you going to be in a digital role that's going to be evaluating external opportunities, external activities or product platforms that may be there for M&A or partnering? If so, definitely consider it. If, however, you're going to be put into a digital box to work on a product in that large strategic who isn't a digital native, it might not be your best alternative right now. So I think it matters on where you are in your career. If you're early in your career, say between 5 and 10 years, you got to be really careful if you're going to lock up your career at a large strategic, if it's not right in their core competency. Because these are the years that you're establishing your network, and most large corporations have employees for a long time, so they're not going anywhere soon in order for you to sort of seed your network for your next opportunity. And things don't move really fast there. They move, but they don't move fast.
Interesting.
So you have to be really careful if you're early, mid, or late career. That would be my guidance on this is what you need to be looking for in the large strategics.
Is it helpful to have on your resume 2 or 3 years at a large strategic and then you've moved on to another large strategic, or to really get the value of that network and that connection, do you have to be there for a longer period of time? So if someone is at a smaller company but they're looking at a large strategic, is 2 or 3 years there enough to really get the value of being part of that company, or should you really commit yourself, I'm going to be there for 10 years or so to really kind of have that strategic imprinted on my resume?
I don't think you have to imprint a timeline post 3 years,
No.
because even if you stay at one organization over 2 to 3 years, you've made some accomplishments. And those accomplishments are by which you're graded. So your extended career is based on what you accomplish over a few years' time. And even if you are within one big strategic, chances are, after a couple of years, you're looking for your next opportunity to grow. And that could be internally or it could be externally. So it really does depend. If you're coming to the table and you have several years in a small company, and someone's giving you an opportunity or encouraging you to explore an opportunity that's within a large strategic, and it is good, meaty, valuable experience and represents where the market's going, you may be doing yourself a huge service by getting that exposure. And over a couple of years' time, you're going to meet people. You're going to develop relationships with those additional subject matter experts within the organization, and they go with you. They go with you. Think of how fast you can develop good rapport and good relationship with people you work with on a project. 6 months, 3 months, a year and a half. I don't think it has to be much longer than that to really make an imprint, so to speak.
Yeah, and what you want to do too, and Holly's right on this. So you have to look at it and go, why did you go there and why did you leave there in your next interview?
Yep.
Right, and then during that time, what did you learn and what did you accomplish? And if they don't ask you that in the interview, you need to be prepared to be proactive to show that. So that's number one. If you run through your whole career in startups or emerging tech companies, there's nothing wrong with that. It really matters what your goals are. And a lot of times I'll get individuals who I want to be a CCO, I want to be a CEO, I want to be a CTO. I said, cool, and what size company? And so going to a large strategic can show you things, processes, what great looks like, what not so great. You get experiences there that you can't get in the emerging tech startups, because the emerging tech startups are just going fast at the expense of a lot of training. So you usually get better training if you seek it out and demand it in the large strategics. And I oftentimes will give advice in an offer letter is to ask in the offer that you get to go to 2 trainings of your own selection every year. Work that into the negotiation. And maybe you're a software engineer and there's a certain language or something you want to learn. Maybe you're a design engineer and there's a vibrations class you want to go to, for lack of a better term. But you oftentimes can get training subsidized, you can get your MBA or your grad degree. There's a lot of things you can gain in those large strategics.
You can also make sure you get Device Talks Boston and Device Talks West in those offer letters too.
That's
Make sure you go to both of them. Sorry, shameless plug. So we've seen on a broader scale, the having one job at one company for your entire career is rare, at least rarer than it used to be. Do we see that model changing at all in Medtech? Talk to someone who's 24, 25 now. Are we still going to see the same percentage of people who have spent 25 years at Medtronic, 25 years at Stryker, 25 years at Baxter, wherever, as we have in the past? Or is the forces that have changed things in the outside world, is it impacting Medtech now? Are we going to see less and less of that?
I think you're going to see less and less of that, especially outside of the highly technical roles. So, you might get the administrators might be there for a really long time, and your G&A might be there for a long time. But for the most part, I don't think you're going to see the career gold watch people there. Number of reasons. A lot of the innovation at the large companies is happening externally now, probably at a much higher rate and a higher percentage. You used to be able to count on a device platform in particular to dominate a market for 5, 6, 7, 8 years. I mean, I think one of the few things you can point to today is like MitraClip out of Abbott, because what happens is those technologies rotate out so quick. Either the clinicians are doing procedures different, or learning more about biology in the human body. The materials are changing. Engineering is getting more clever. So you're not able to hold a market share. So therefore, product platforms are disappearing a lot quicker. And then the jobs are with that as well, oftentimes. And you're also starting to see more of a sales, marketing, distribution, manufacturing in the large strategics. And the specialization on those are changing very quickly as well. So unless you're a lifelong aggressive learner, you might be compromised if all you're doing is showing up every day, and I don't mean it that in a negative way.
right.
You could be compromised in this ever-evolving need to be a lifelong aggressive learner in your career in medtech for sure.
We're seeing some of that, unfortunately, the fallout from those who have missed those opportunities to continue to grow and be current and continue to be marketable. So yeah, that can be a real challenge. I will though say I don't believe we'll ever see a world where there isn't a certain population of individuals who want to go to a career home and bank on it, for as long as they possibly can. And the big strategics, the big companies, are always going to need those spokes in the wheel, right? So there's always going to be that population that keeps the machine going and misses opening their eyes to other things because they're so focused on the ball ahead of them. Now, will they retire with a watch? Probably not. That's not going to happen, but they will spend many, many years in one organization, and they'll get moved and pinched wherever the company needs them.
Yeah, with the risk there, and Holly's right on that, the risk there, though, is the longer you're at the corporation, the more expensive you are to the corporation.
Yes.
And so that value starts to come into play.
Right.
So if you're there for 20, 25 years, odds are you're up at the upper echelon of the earning in that band that you're in.
Right.
And then I've got Sally coming in right now who has been a lifelong learner or 8 years into her career with the most progressive stuff, and usually the education's super current and her materials experience or whatever she's doing, and she could be up to 60% of the cost that you are.
Right.
And so you're putting yourself at risk there as organizations start to evaluate what's the ROI I'm getting at that point in time. And then the years of organizations taking care of their people, I hate to say it, are kind of over.
Yeah.
And so when you start to sort of point all those at that subject, you put yourself at risk.
Holly, on the engineering side, we'll be talking a lot of engineering at Device Talks Boston. Where do you, if you were advising someone in their mid-20s right now, as to where someone might get the most experience or the most bang for their time spent on engineering, would you direct them toward startups? I know you work with a lot of startups. Would you direct them toward a larger company? Does it depend on the person? How should someone who's watching this right now, fitting that demographic, how should they sort of view the best possible path for their career? What should they be doing?
The good news is neither are wrong necessarily. You can get great marketable experience in either. The point is the same. You have to continue to learn. You have to continue to evolve, no matter what stage you are in your career. So if you're new and you're going to an organization where you can spend several years learning valuable experience, whether that's a big strategic or a young company, they're all companies, they're all experiences, and it's individual. Like Joe said, the companies don't take care of us anymore, and that's not their job. Their job is to make money and give it back to their shareholders, and that's the function of a company. We have to take care of ourselves. We have to take care of our own career, and how are we going to do that? We're going to continue to grow, and we're going to continue to grow in a place where there's value add that makes sense to the business. So you can go wrong only if it's viscerally wrong for you. If you're an engineer and you're going to work on something that you're not challenged by and you don't feel like you're being your authentic engineering self, then you're in the wrong spot.
Yeah.
But if something dials you in and it happens to have a big banner headline on it, don't dismiss it because you feel you're entrepreneurial. You can get good experience, and early in career, that's the time to try new things and explore.
No, that's a great point. And I think it's
Yeah, and I think more important than the company, Tom, is who is the person that you're going to work for. Because that person, I will tell you, is getting the band back together is a serial behavior in medtech.
Yes, it is.
Right? So,
Yes, it
so
is.
the pull through from some of these great, Holly and I are fortunate. She's 25 years in it, and I'm 32 years in it. And we were just out at ISHLT, the heart lung transplant business, and I was sitting a bunch of CEOs who run these companies now, and we were giggling because in Miami Lakes 25 years ago, they were just little punky engineers and little punky product managers, and now they're CEOs. but they've pulled people along with them their whole careers.
Yeah, yeah.
And that band, if you will, so pick the person you're going to work for first.
Interesting.
Right? And then they will pull you, if you're good, they will pull you along, or they will be a mouthpiece for you when another leader says, listen, I need a great clin person. It's like, okay, I got her. She's over here right now. Give her a call, tell her I sent you. That's more important than the company you go to work for.
That's interesting. And I want to talk about the company perspective in a moment, but just to drill down on that point, how do you assess that person that you're interviewing with? How do you know that they're the kind of person that maybe you could support and help and be part of their ongoing story?
You're talking about the leader?
Yeah, the leader. Like,
Yeah, so they have a track record.
Yeah.
And what's great about LinkedIn right now is you can look up any leader.
Yeah.
Where in the past, previous to LinkedIn, you weren't going to get, Doug Godshall's resume,
Right.
But you can go online and say, okay, who did they work with? Where did they work? What did they do? What was the exit of that company? How did it do with the FDA? What were the clinicals like? It's easy. You can dig all this up online, clinicaltrials.gov. And then people who are working there now because on LinkedIn it says you're also connected to these 222 people that Doug is connected to.
Yep.
And then you can call up and see, again, maybe not for Doug proper, but the people who work for him. And so it's really easy to reverse engineer your career path here, and more than it's ever been before. So I would say, what did they take to market? Don't look at a company failing as a bad leader. Sometimes it was a bad time in the market. Sometimes it was, I go back to the days of, remember when we built Novost, right? So right before the drug-eluting stent came out, there was a radiating stent, right, out of Novost, and they were ready to go public. And then I think the drug-eluting stent with Bill Hawkins was running the company, and Don Weber was there then. They just went from being a darling to just
Overnight.
it wasn't anybody's fault. It was bad timing in the market.
Yep.
So you've got to make your decisions that way too. Get context around what happened at that company, because sometimes one or two really bad experiences is oftentimes the best teacher.
Interesting. So let's flip the script a bit. Let's pretend you're on the hiring side of these companies. Getting the right person can change your world day to day. Like having someone who is filling the needs that you need filled, and they're just delightful to work with. They can just
Our best
He asked me
marriage
to say
yet?
it can be all the difference in the world. So what can these companies who have had some headlines now that cast doubts upon stability and things like that, what can these larger companies or anyone who's hiring, what messaging should they be getting out there to attract the best people and to really get the right people into this organization so it can meet its potential and go where it needs to go?
Yeah, I don't know if there's been a more timely question in this market that you just put out there than right now. I'm really watching a major fumble by the large strategics right now, in particular those that have gone through some big downsizing. We talk about Medtronic, we talk about J&J, even CMR, who's doing extraordinarily well, just let go hundreds of people.
Yeah.
What they're doing is they're talking about what they're doing and why they're doing it. I understand that for shareholder value and burn rate on money. But what they're doing is they're leaving an irresponsible vacuum of, but hey, here is why you still may want to come here. Because if they don't address that vacuum, Tom, they're going to have a generational gap in great talent because they're not telling the story that needs to fill that vacuum of, look, tough time, bad decisions, market shifts. Having said that, though, here's the reasons why you still want to come here. And there's not a single organization doing that right now. And it's a terrible, terrible thing that they're doing to their future selves as well as to the current people who work there. Because if you're not going to be bringing in what I call these force multipliers, I don't want to think about what your product platforms are going to be 5 years from now. Because right now, the great people are also looking at the door and getting calls all over the place. And if they're early or mid-career right now and sitting around and you're 8-10 years into your career and you're at one of these big strategics and things are going to be flat for 3 years, I can guarantee you that A players are like, I can't hang out here. Nothing's going to happen for 3 years. I'm just going to be on a hamster wheel and just get the same experience for the next 3 years. And people are going to say, well, why'd you stay there during that time? To help me understand that, because that was just an absolute train wreck. And so I think what's happening right now is the corporations, what do they need to be doing? They need to get way out in front of this. Take it on the chin. We made some bad decisions. We had some bad timing. We executed less than optimally. Having said that, here's who you can become if you come here. Here's who you're going to work with if you come here. Here's why we're showing up every day. And here's why this market that we're in, let's call it diabetes right now, here's what the growth is in that market. And here's the product we're working on in this market. Here's why you still want to apply here for a job, even though the rest of the news out there is less than optimal. I am flabbergasted why leadership is not filling that vacuum with positive messaging.
Yeah, maybe it's a matter of timing, but Holly, you can add to that or speak for the smaller companies. You've got a lot, part of your portfolio, you work with the startups, and I'm sure they have an opportunity to say, hey, we got a lot of cool stuff happening over here. Like check it out now. Yeah, you know, the steady paycheck, quote unquote, is great, but you know, come find something you're truly passionate about. How would you advise them to take advantage of this situation and fill their ranks with the right people?
Yeah, and it just coming off of what Joe shares, sometimes inaction is action, right?
Yeah.
So when you don't address the elephant in the room, where your buddies that you've known for the last 10 years are no longer there, and you just say, oh, it's a bad time, let's move along, then everyone in that organization is now in defense mode. No one's playing offense anymore. No one's playing offense. So the innovation is stifled, as we all know. So yes, there's a huge opportunity for young companies because that's where the innovation happens, even in the best of times. So the young organizations have the prime time to speak their reality, what they are bringing, the value they're bringing, why it's important to be there. What is the mission? What is the market that they're going after? What is this? And ensuring that the people who are impacted at least are cognizant and aware of who they are. Awareness and attention has never been as important as it is right now for young organizations in particular. Because look, when the larger strategics are not speaking, they are speaking. And people are starting to think about what is next. And just like companies, if inaction is action, same with the individuals. If you're sitting in the pocket with an organization that is not going to innovate for the next few years and hanging on to a job that you really hate, you're basically telling your future employer that you were either too scared to make a move, or you really aren't. You can't tell me that you want to go to a young company when you have all these opportunities and timing and you never peep your head up, you know? So you're saying things without saying them.
That's interesting. And I think ultimately, if you're in that position where you're not energized and moving forward, somehow that catches up to you.
It always does. And Tom, in this market, the acceleration right now of technologies and the iteration development of medical devices has never, ever been as fabulous as it is right now. It's an unbelievable time to be in medtech because there's so many new things that are being deployed. There's so many, you don't have to be a big company to be a big player any longer. You know, we're seeing that all the time as these small players, because of the technology shifts and the rapid adoption of certain technologies by these clinicians is incredible, and they're scaling very quickly. So, and they're being acquired very quickly, much quicker than ever. I remember when we first started, you get acquired just on clearance or approval from the FDA, and then that stopped. Somebody got smart and realized, you know, that clearance and approval doesn't mean adoption and utilization. And so adoption and utilization was then what you needed to demonstrate at scale. And then the price, of course, would go 2 and 3x on that, but also the risk would be supposedly mitigated. But now what we're starting to see, it's sort of coming back, is that adoption and utilization is like, well, we're not sure we have to worry about that as much anymore. And because the startups right now, the emerging tech, are saying, well, yeah, I would have liked to exit for 800 million, but I'll take 600 million right now because I just need to get the heck out and get my investors their money. And so we no longer have to wait as long for that adoption utilization if we can mitigate that risk, and the markets are pretty predictable. Now those technologies are getting picked up quicker post-clearance, but certainly not the extra year or year and a half on adoption utilization, which was the case up for the last 7 or 8 years.
Holly, final word to you. Speak to the young engineers in medtech about the opportunities ahead, and speak to, say, hypothetically, my son who's going to be an engineer and wants to go into aerospace. I would love him to go to biomed, but let him follow his own dreams. But what would the sales pitch for biomed be for future engineers and for engineers who are just making their way in the industry and looking around and saying, what's happening here?
Well, first of all, aerospace is great.
It is
And
great,
we
I
pull
know.
a lot of great people from aerospace
Oh,
into
good.
medtech later on.
All right,
so
we'll
let
still-
them get some good experience and we'll talk.
All right.
No, the reality is, look, people who come into medtech do so because we're elevating patient care.
Yeah.
We're taking care of our parents, our kids, our family members, all of those who have been impacted. So there's really, frankly, there's no better industry. It's a matter of how you get into it. And you can get into it directly out of school. You can get into it different points of your career. We're seeing more transition than ever. It's wonderful to see how much cross-pollination is going on between medtech, any other industry, and technology, as well as biotech and pharma. There's a lot more openness and sharing in terms of innovation. So that's good for everyone. So for those young in career, look, engineering happens in many, many, many different ways, and you can get great experience. Is biotech the best one? Yes, and you should eventually get into it, Tom's son. But at the end of the day, you know, let him go towards where he feels he's going to learn and continue to grow, because that's the common theme between every stage, every company size. It's not just it's big companies, small companies, all companies. Where are you individually going to continue to grow and build on that over your lifetime?
Yeah, follow your passions for sure. All right, this has been a great conversation. Thanks again for having Device Talks here at 160 Studios. It's been great. And thank you all for joining us. Device Talks Boston happens May 10th and 11th. Joe and Holly will be there, as I mentioned, up top. So if you'd like to have a private conversation with them, they'll be front and center, I guarantee. So just register, make sure you use the code TMG25, save 25% off the price. You can go to devicetalks.com to register. And we'd love to see you there, and make sure you say hello to myself as well. I'll be walking around in a crazy fog, but just grab me and say hello. It'd be great to meet you in person. Thanks for watching.